Hello, everyone. My name is Loyal Wooldridge, and this is Loyal's Kelowna Community QuickCast. And this is our final episode, number 12.
12.
If you
12
can
weeks.
imagine that.
We started off, you and I, the first one, 12 weeks ago.
12 weeks ago.
Wow. And during that time, I mean, it's been an unprecedented situation election-wise, right?
Absolutely.
How many doors have you gone to, by the way?
We've knocked on over 7,000 doors.
What?
Huge number. By the way, this is Rick Webber. You probably remember him from Global Okanagan and current city councilor.
Sorry, I interrupted you. I'm just used to taking over and interviewing people, right? So, but this is your deal. But I was pleased to be here for the first one, and we did one in the middle, and now here, and to take it over because you introduced it, but I'm going to ask the questions. I do want to quickly ask you: 7,000 doors is an unprecedented opportunity to get to know your neighbors.
Yeah, absolutely.
What did you learn?
You know, door knocking is really one of the biggest public engagements that you can do.
Oh, it's intense.
And what's really interesting is that people have shared 4 or 5 main priorities for the city, and much of them are the same. Everyone's circumstance is a little bit different, but you know, whether we're talking about housing, or we're talking about crime and safety, or we're talking about the cost of living, or access to healthcare, people are really united in those priorities. How we get to achieve and create change is always what differs. But it was really interesting to see how people are really aligned in those 4 main priorities.
And it's true too, because even being on city council, and you have been, of course, longer than me, but you know, I think when you look at council's priorities, they pretty much lay out, I think, what people in Kelowna wish and want and would like to see, right? And being on council, the thing I've learned in my 2 years is how important it is to be able to work with other levels of government to get these things done. I mean, we use your property taxes to do things like, you know, keep water going and sewer going and parks and rec and everything and roads. But to do the big stuff and the difficult stuff, you really need to have a really good working relationship.
It's really that partnership with different levels of government, regardless of party, to attract investment here. Because a lot of these big ticket items that people talk about, whether that's housing or transportation infrastructure, our property tax bill, you know, we can't do that alone. We need and we rely on those partnerships with the provincial and federal government, which is why I've thrown my hat into this very interesting race that we're all in right now.
Interesting is right. I mean, I've started covering politics in BC in the late 70s. I never saw anything like this, you know, especially when the opposition party, the main opposition, you might say, imploded under itself. And what is left is, even here in Kelowna, is the biggest gap I can ever remember between two parties in terms of their beliefs. There's nothing in the middle. They're so wide apart. I mean, the NI party and the NDP used to have certain things that they kind of like base ideas that they agreed on. I don't see much of that right now.
It's a very stark election.
That might be the right word.
You know, you've got 2 sides and not much in the middle. So as John Horgan used to always say, there's a lot of new Democratic voters, they just don't know it yet. So a lot of folks that I've spoken to have said, you know, I've never voted for the NDP. I like you as a person and the work you've done on council, so I'm supporting you, which I appreciate.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, I think this is really about attracting that right MLA for Kelowna Centre that knows what we need here in Kelowna and can start on day one advocating.
Oh yeah, and you can, because you have already. You already do it on council. So, you know, I hate to bring up difficult topics. This is your campaign thing, but that's why we're here.
Yep.
And being on city council, I feel like regular council business is going really quite well. Our finances are good. We've got the Parkinson Rec Center. We've got all these things going. I think the city is running really well. Where we run into our criticism from the residents are the things that aren't really within city business, but we have to deal with them. And that, of course, is homelessness, crime, addiction.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And that is totally in line with what you must be hearing.
Absolutely.
As an NDP candidate.
Yep. I'm hearing about it every single day. Obviously, I've heard about it for 2 terms while I've been on council. Honestly, it's why I joined council in the first place, was to really understand those issues and the solutions to overcome them, but also how we got here.
Right.
And so I spend a lot of time on the doorstep talking about what led us to the poverty we see today? What led us to the housing crisis? What led us to the addiction crisis that we're in right now? And it's been underfunding, it's been government cutbacks, which is honestly what I fear with a conservative government, again, is that our most vulnerable are the ones that will be hit hardest by some policy changes that might not benefit people.
And it's kind of hard to say in a way, because it's not clear to me. I know the path we've been following with the current government, because we're working step by step with them and they're making announcements and we're doing projects. I really don't know what would happen if the Conservatives were elected. I don't know what their plan is. I hope we'd be able to pick it up and do some great things with them, but I don't know what it would be.
Yeah, I think we're 4 days out from the election, and I still haven't been able to review a costed platform. It may have been released by now, but a lot of promises and statements have been made. But these are really complex issues.
Yeah, and they're not, that's right. That's the thing I keep telling. And they're not going to be solved overnight. You can't make an election announcement to say, for instance, one of my priorities is I would love to see that tent city, that camp along the rail trail gone.
Yeah.
And I mean, council never wanted it there in the first place. We didn't want a tent city there, but it's there.
Yeah.
And we keep building mini homes and shelters and things, but that doesn't seem to get rid of the tent city.
Right.
Something big has to happen.
And, I think I often bring this back to, I think everyone watching this included, and the people living in tent city don't want a tent city.
Right.
And we got there because we don't have the housing, we don't have the services, and we have to keep chipping away at that. How we get there obviously can be massaged and changed, and we saw an announcement with involuntary care, as we've already talked about. But it's a very complex and nuanced issue, and I wish I had that silver bullet answer. But at the end of the day, a lot of folks are living down there because of poverty. Then they cycle into addiction, and on it goes. So that's why taking care of people is so important.
It's so dangerous having them live there.
It is very dangerous. It's not safe for the people living there or the people in our community.
No.
And we have to stay laser focused on overcoming that obstacle. I'm confident that we can get there. And, I think the city has done an exceptional job at understanding what we need to do and where we need to partner. But at the end of the day, it's a provincial responsibility. We have to have a representative that understands it and that can think pragmatically. And if things aren't working, have the courage to say that.
Well, we'll remember that when after Saturday, and if you're elected, then I'm gonna make sure I quote you on those words over and over again.
Well, I think Maxine has already said I already have your number on speed dial.
Yeah.
So I'll just send all those provincial calls to you.
and of course, as well, we're working with the province to get other big priorities done. For instance, transit needs to be improved in this city, and I guess the big hurdle is a place for the buses to be.
Yeah, and I think I just saw on a council agenda, because obviously I'm on leave, but I think you guys just approved the rezoning of the property out by UBCO.
That's
for
right.
That bus yard.
So it's ready. That's ready to go, but it's going to be a big job to get that built. Right?
Totally.
But you can't expand the city's transit system without having those new yards.
Yes.
And so that is, again, something you'd have to work closely with the province and maybe the feds as well, right?
100%. And it's interesting because, a promise was made about that second crossing, on it goes. But, we have the plan for the new bus yard, the Clement extension, and hopefully expanding a 6th lane on the bridge. And when I did the quick calculation of all those projects, it's like $500 million versus the $3 billion it would cost for a bridge. And it just showed me that's why it's so important to have these relationships with the municipalities, so that we're actually delivering the infrastructure that communities want and need.
Well, the bridge, who wouldn't mind seeing a second bridge? But I thought to myself, is there land sitting there waiting? If the bridge was built, do we have a route to take traffic off it? There's a few things you got to look into first before you build a bridge, right?
I remember we looked at designating some parkland on Manhattan Point, and that didn't go over very well.
No. So the transit thing is, of course, something that I think that's a top priority for council, and you know it. And you know what the provincial route with that would be, right?
Yeah.
We're trying to we're trying to expand our road network.
Yep.
And the biggest one is the Clement extension. Explain what that is. You've been working on it longer than I have.
Yeah, so the Clement extension is intended to create redundancy to the highway and would run along basically right beside the highway, just a few blocks over, to connect Spall up into UBCO and eventually YLW. And that will be a multimodal corridor, which eventually could be light rail in the future if we had the ridership to do it. Right. But ultimately would be a rapid transit route to connect downtown out to UBCO and eventually the airport. And that is what will create some relief to Highway 97. Now, of course, we could also look at the lights off Highway 97 off the bridge, but these are all conversations that have to happen in concert with municipalities because it affects the people that local government are serving as well.
I feel like we could have a better relationship with the Ministry of Transportation and how they hire how they run that highway. So, but that's been going on for decades. And well, there's so many. Again, you're talking about, for instance, they call it the red fish model of drug addiction. We're going back to that and that treatment, and that is it's not voluntary.
Yeah, so Redfish Healing Center is in Vancouver, and that is opened on the old Riverview site, I believe. And it's a trauma-informed treatment facility for folks that have overlapping substance misuse, as well as mental health and brain injury issues. And some of it is involuntary care. And part of what David Eby has committed to are regional centers similar to this. This is one of Council's priorities as well, because we know there's a small amount of people in Kelowna that need that level of care, that are committing repeat property offenses, whether that's bike thefts or what have you. But a lot of that behavior is spurred on because of brain injury from synthetic drug use. And we've seen over time how that's affected.
It is, and at least people feeling unsafe in their own community, which is, and I think that's the bottom line, because no matter what we do, we improve transit, we improve transportation, whatever we do as a city, if you don't feel safe in your town, then you feel like the whole thing is kind of a failure.
Absolutely, and people should feel safe in community, and people don't feel safe. And that's what we have to continually work towards. It's not as easy as just hiring our CMP and having them out patrolling, because we really have to get down to the root issue of why that's happening. We are growing into a big city, and with that comes these big city problems with really complex overlapping and intersecting issues.
Right. All right. Well, I could go on and on. Oh, one more thing was the airport. I don't know whether the province might be involved in that, but one of the priorities for the Kelowna City Council is to expand the amount of businesses out around the airport. YLW is a main economic generator for the city, right?
YLW is a huge economic generator for the city from passenger travel and tourism. But when I'm talking to young people, what I'm hearing is that we need to attract more good-paying jobs so that young people can make a life here. It's very expensive to live in Kelowna, and the only way we can overcome this is attracting those high-paying employers, and they're not necessarily passenger travel employers, but connected to aviation in some way, whether that's logistics or manufacturing or
shipping.
What have
it
you.
could be
Shipping.
anything. Yeah, that's right. So we have land out by the airport. We're lucky. I talked to a member of the Chamber of Commerce from Nanaimo, and they came out and saw the Center for was it Excellence?
Yeah.
And they see the airport, and we have no space, we have no potential for development. Like, they were quite envious of what we have. But to open up a whole area on the eastern side of the airport and have these industries come in, it's going to take some work, and it's not going to be just the local taxpayer having to fund that.
100%. And what's unique about Kelowna is that we're one of the only municipalities that actually own their airport.
Yeah.
Which is fully self-funded, no taxation at all. And with that comes this great opportunity. But again, it's going to be that partnership with provincial and federal governments, because the cost of infrastructure is going to be quite high. But again, it's having people here that know these opportunities that can get to work right away.
Right. All right. Yeah. Well, I won't drag it on for you any longer, because the interview's about to end, but the campaign's about to end as well.
Exactly.
Just
only a few more days.
A few days, and you've talked to these thousands of people. It's an interesting campaign because you're also facing, I guess there's independents running in all the different ridings. It's quite an odd campaign.
Yes, it's very chaotic.
How are you? Yes. How are you feeling about it after this?
I'm feeling really good. What I love is that people are paying attention. They are knowing the issues. They're coming out and getting engaged, which is so important in a provincial election. Unfortunately, some candidates aren't showing up. That's been a challenge. But overall, people are really interested in seeing a brighter future for Kelowna and British Columbia, and that's what we really have to focus on.
All right. So your message is?
Well, my message is, please get out and vote,
right.
Whether that's in your advance polls, which are open right now, or on election day. Make sure you get out and vote, and encourage at least 10 of your friends to do the same thing. Choose candidates that know Kelowna, that have been doing the work, that know how to deliver results. That's the work I've been doing. That's why I ran for council in the first place. That's why I've been annoying him for the past couple of years. But it's really about choosing that candidate that's ready to get to work on day one. And with that, I would like to say thank you so much for tuning into Loyal's Community QuickCast over the past 12 weeks. It's been an absolute pleasure to join you here in the Kelowna Now studios, and I look forward to representing you as Kelowna Center's next MLA. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.